Out here, the West didn't hand out happy endings. It handed out consequences. Names got carved into headstones faster than they got written down. Men disappeared. Towns pretended they never existed. And justice was usually whoever showed up holding it. This is Hell for Dinner. True stories from the Wild West, where the line between lawman and outlaw was thin, and the ground was always hungry. Tombstone's most famous gunfight lasts about 30 seconds. Roughly 30 shots crack the air. 3 men die in the dirt. But the reason it became legend isn't just the speed, it's that those 30 seconds didn't end anything. They started a chain reaction that turned Tombstone into a revenge machine. Here's the promise. By the end of this, you'll understand who these men were, why the standoff was basically inevitable, and why the biggest fight after the gunfire wasn't with bullets. It was with stories. Because if you can control the story, you can control who the town calls a hero and who they call a murderer. And in Tombstone, the story was worth more than silver. Tombstone, Arizona, 1881. A booming, violent money town, trying to cosplay as civilized. Saloons, gamblers, miners, and men walking around armed because the world still feels optional. At the center is the Earp crew, Virgil Earp, the one carrying official responsibility in town. Wyatt, the most famous name later, but in that moment, a man with reputation and resolve. Morgan, the brother close enough to bleed for it. And then there's Doc Holliday, sick, sharp, loyal, and unpredictable, the kind of friend you want in a crisis and fear in a calm room. Across town, the Cowboys, men like the Clantons and McClorys, armed, proud, and done being pushed by badges. This conflict doesn't start with one insult. It builds like a storm front. Arrests, threats, men drinking, men carrying guns when they shouldn't. Tension stacking until every interaction feels like a test. And here's what makes this perfect for tragedy. Both sides believe they're the reasonable ones. The Earps see themselves as holding back chaos. The Cowboys see themselves as refusing to be bullied. So each step feels justified, which means each step becomes easier. And by the time we get to the afternoon of October 26, 1881, the town isn't asking if something happens, only where. Now lock onto the characters for a second, because the gunfight makes more sense when you know what each man wants. Virgil wants control, a town that stops spiraling. Wyatt wants finality, no more threats hanging in the air. Morgan wants to stand with his brothers. Doc wants loyalty proven in action. On the other side, the Cowboys want respect. And respect in the West often means, you don't tell me what to do. This is why it tightens into a noose. It's not just law versus outlaw. It's pride versus pride. And pride doesn't de-escalate. Pride dares. So the confrontation begins with something deceptively boring. A decision to go disarm armed men. Not a duel. Not a planned showdown. A move meant to stop the next problem. But the town can feel what's happening. People sense the temperature change. Windows become viewing booths, doorways become cover, and then 4 figures start walking with purpose, not running, not shouting, walking. That walk matters because it's the last calm moment in the story. The West had a way of turning calm into violence, so fast your brain couldn't process the transition. And every step the Earps take is a step into a smaller space. A space where distance disappears and mistakes become lethal. They reach a narrow lot near the OK Corral area. This is the first big movie lie. You imagine a wide street. You imagine room to breathe. But this is cramped, close range, bad angles. This kind of space doesn't allow clean hero shots or dramatic pacing. It forces chaos. It forces flinches. It forces people to shoot because their bodies decide before their brains do. And now the question that will live forever is about to ignite. Who moved first? Who fired first? Was it law doing its job, or law acting like a gang with badges? Because in that lot, a hand shift can look like an attack. Accounts differ on the exact words, because when adrenaline hits, memory becomes unreliable. But the mechanics are consistent. Movement, tension, a break in the stillness, and then the world snaps from talk to gunfire. This is where viewers lean in. Because everyone wants the clean answer, who started it? But the West rarely gives you clean answers. It gives you a moment so fast that everyone believes their own version, and that belief becomes the weapon they carry afterward. Gunfire detonates. Not one dramatic shot, an eruption. Shots echo off walls. Dust jumps. Men recoil and fire anyway. At this distance, aiming is almost a myth. It's instinct, it's muscle memory, it's fear, and it's fast, about 30 seconds, around 30 shots. Then it stops, like someone cut the film. When the smoke clears, the result is brutal. Billy Clanton is dead. Frank McClory is dead. Tom McClory is dead. The Earps and Doc aren't untouched, wounded, shaken, alive. Wyatt is still standing. And Tombstone has a new problem. The bodies are only the beginning, because now everyone has to decide what they just witnessed. If you supported the Earps, you call it necessary. If you hated them, you call it murder. And here's the genius and the curse of a legendary moment. It becomes simple enough to repeat, but complex enough to argue forever. The lot becomes a stage people revisit in their minds, changing the camera angle to make their preferred villain. And the families of the dead don't care about nuance. They care about loss. So even if the gunfire ends in 30 seconds, the emotional clock starts here, and it doesn't stop ticking. Next comes the paperwork war. Testimony, hearings, statements, newspapers. This is where the story becomes dangerous. Because once legal systems and media get involved, the conflict spreads beyond the men who actually fired shots. Now it's reputations, careers, survival. And remember, Tombstone isn't just a town, it's a pressure cooker of egos with money on the line. So every retelling is strategic. Every witness has a side. Every headline nudges public opinion. And public opinion in the West can be as lethal as a revolver, because it decides who gets protection and who becomes a target. This is why the OK Corral is famous, not only for the gunfire, but because it became a national argument in miniature. Here's the deeper truth. It happened too fast for certainty, which is exactly why it turns into myth. Humans hate ambiguity, so we edit uncertainty out of history and replace it with a clean narrative. But the bodies remain, the wounds remain, and the lot remains narrow. The OK Corral becomes a symbol because it gives people permission to believe what they already wanted to believe, that law is either protection or oppression. And once that belief hardens, retaliation starts to feel righteous. That's the real fuse, because when a town picks sides, it doesn't calmly step away from the line. It crosses it, again and again, until somebody's whole life becomes revenge. So if you're watching this for the cool gunfight, understand the hook hiding underneath. The gunfight is the match, not the fire. The fire is what comes after, when surviving men walk around with wounds and pride and grief, and every shadow feels like an enemy. That's when legends get truly toxic, when they turn into justification. And Tombstone is about to prove that point in the months that follow. Because when one side feels wronged, closure doesn't mean peace. It means payback.